Hello friends. In this video, we are going to see one more interview problem which is shared by Priya. I'll provide her LinkedIn link in the description. If you are preparing for interview, you can follow me on LinkedIn. I'll provide LinkedIn profile link also in the description, and let's see the problem now. So we have to write a calculator function which handles addition, subtraction, multiplication and division, and also it should support this way of calling. For example, we have calc.number and we are passing a number which is the initial value, and on top of that we are chaining add method and we are adding 3 with the 10, right? So whenever we chain print method, this should print 13 in the console. And also we are going to chain another method which is sub. It will subtract 6 from the previous value which is 13. And then if you chain print method, again should print 7. Same way we should be able to chain multiple methods, right? So we can chain addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, and also print method so that it will print the output. So I have broken down these things into multiple lines to show the output, but actual code looks something like this. Now let's write the solution. So I'm going to move this commented section outside, okay? And as we know, we have a function. If we call new keyword on top of this function, it is going to create a new instance of this function, right? So if we console calc, it is going to give empty object, okay? And we can add properties to this function by using this dot sum equal to 10, okay? Now under this object we have one property which is sum, which has value 10. Okay, so we can add any kind of properties here, right? Now let's try to understand the question. Instead of solving this big problem, let's try to solve a smaller problem. For example, I'll just copy this section, okay? Okay, so we have calculator and we are providing a number which is initial value 10, and we are adding 3 to it, right? And also we are printing the value. In this problem we have number with initial value 10 and we are subtracting 3 with it and we are printing it, right? So let's try to solve one of this smaller problem. Okay, as we can see here, we are using dot operator. In JavaScript, we can access a property of an object by using dot operator, right? Then this calc should be an object. When we use new keyword, we'll get a new object. So now we are trying to access number property, and also we are calling with bracket, which means this number property should be a function, right? So what I'll do, I'll create this dot number and it should be a function, and it is taking an argument which is initial value. So let me just console the initial value. Okay, now let's try to console this. Okay, so we are getting init and 10, right? And also this calculator should contain add, sub, multiplication, so all these methods. So I'll add all those methods. Add is going to be a function which will take a value, and also sub and multiplication and division, right? So we have all this method, and also we have something called print. It is not going to take any argument, right? Okay, now we have to implement this. Okay, if you see the next step here, so we are chaining dot add to this number. Okay, so now if I do the same here, okay, here I'm getting some error. So what is the error? You can see cannot read property of undefined reading add. Why we are getting this error? So in runtime, when we run this program, what happens is we have this calc.number. Whatever is returned from this function, that will be replaced here, okay, in runtime. So we are not returning anything. If you are not returning anything from a function, by default JavaScript will return undefined, right? So then undefined will be replaced here. If we have undefined dot something, then we will get this error for sure, because undefined doesn't have any property and we are trying to add some property out of undefined. So that's the reason we are getting this error. And now we have to return something. Okay, we have to return something, and that should be chainable by using dot. Okay, so in JavaScript only object can be chained with dot, right? So now here we have to return an object. Okay, let's return an object, and now we are getting different error. Calc dot number and then dot add is not a function, because this empty object doesn't have add property and it will return undefined again. So this will be replaced with undefined. So you are trying to execute undefined, right? So we are getting the same kind of error. Undefined is not a function, and this is also same error. Add is not a function, right? The add property will be undefined and we are trying to execute the undefined. Now we can add method and we can make it as a function and it will take a value. So now we are not getting any error, right? When I save, we are not getting any error. Okay, so we are returning this object which has add property. Consider this scenario when we call sub method, right? So instead of add, I'm calling sub method. Okay, so we are again getting the error because this object whatever we are returning doesn't have sub property to it. So now what I'll do, I'll just add sub again, and now the error is gone. So we can see init 10 we are getting, and in case if we have multiplication, again we'll get the error and we have to add this mul, and if we use division we have to use div here, right? You can see we are adding these 4 properties which is already there in our calculator function, right? So add sub mul div, right? So if I print here, right, again if I use print, again I have to add print property here, right? So whenever the chain extends, we cannot keep returning new object again and again. Okay, instead we can reuse all these methods. So we have added all this method already, so we can reuse these methods inside this instead of creating new object. Okay, so here there is one more main thing. There is something called this keyword, as you all know. So this keyword is going to contain the instance, right? So the calc instance we have, right? The same thing will be here in this keyword, and we know this calc instance is going to contain number, add, sub, mul, all these methods, right? So if I console this, okay, now here we can see this keyword is going to contain add, sub, multiplication and division. Okay, so now this property is containing all these properties. Now instead of creating new object and returning, I'll just return this from here. Okay, and this contains all these properties. Now I can chain dot add 10. Okay, so now we are actually calling this method. Okay, we are reusing this keyword which is the current object, and we are calling this add method. Now I'll console val here. Okay, so which is going to be inside add. Great, so we are getting add 10 here. Okay, we can make it 3 or any number. Now we have to add 2 values, which is initial value and the current value, right? So how can we add that? So we are passing this value inside a function. Okay, when we call this function, we should have the access to the previous value, right? So what we can do, we can keep the initial value inside this instance itself, and I'll make it 0 by default. And whenever call this number method, we are going to take this value and put it inside this dot initial value. When we call this one, okay, I'll just console this. Now we can see we have the previous value, which is 10 we passed from here, right? So this is the same instance. So we are updating the value inside this same instance. And now what we can do, we can just add this dot initial value plus equal to val. Okay, and to chain again dot add or sub any method, we already have this in this keyword. We can just return this. Okay, so we can subtract 3. Again, we are calling this subtract method. We have to implement this. It should be minus equal to, and the multiplication is multiplication equal to, and this is going to be division and equal to. Okay, and while we are calling this print method, we are just going to console initial value and return this from here. Okay, so instead of initial value, I think I can name it sum, right? Now let's try to run this program by giving print. Okay, so we are getting 10 because we have initial value 10 and then adding 3 and subtracting 3 again. If I subtract 1 from 13, now we should get 12. Same way, now I'm going to chain sub 2 and multiply 2 and then print. I'll get 20. And also we can try this one. Okay, we don't have multiply, we have to rename to multiply, and we have to rename it to divide. Okay, so now we can see 13, 7, 70 and 35, which is expected. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like and share with your friends, and subscribe to this channel and keep supporting. Thank you.